Welcome to the Sunriver Anglers Fly Tying Corner, where each month we bring you a new fly pattern to give a try to on our Central Oregon lakes and rivers. In addition to showing you how to tie each pattern, I'll feature fishing technique tips and tricks, and I'll cover some of the entomology behind each pattern to help gain a better understanding of the bugs that we're trying to imitate. I have field tested each of the patterns that I feature each month to make sure that they catch fish. I'll cover tying instructions for the fly as well as materials to help you be able to recreate these patterns on your own vise. For this month's pattern, I'm going to tie a black emerging caddis. This is a fly I've been using with tremendous success out on one of our area lakes during a Longhorn caddis hatch. It's taken me a while to figure this one out. Initially, I thought the fish were feeding on calabatus, but the Longhorn caddis had been hatching for some weeks and the fish were really keyed in on them. And so once I tied this pattern, bingo, it really took off, and I've caught a lot of really nice rainbows and browns on this pattern in a local area lake. So let me cover the materials for this pattern. I'll touch upon them one by one so you get an idea of why I selected each. For a hook, I'm going to use a Firehole 419, and I tied this one in size 14, but you can range from 14 to 18 as the size of this fly varies. For a thread, I'm going to use a Danville's flat waxed in black. I used a little stronger thread because I've really got to bind down that deer hair wing. For the trailing shuck, I'm using crinkled Zelon that I get from Blue Ribbon Flies in Montana. And the color I'm using is Mayfly Brown. I use about a half a hank on each fly. For the abdomen on this fly, I'm using about 85% spiky squirrel dubbing in black, blended with an ice dub in holographic golden orange. The natural has a slight rust color to it, and I find adding a little bit of this ice dub really goes a long way to matching the natural. For the wing, I'm using some natural white-tailed deer hair. And lastly, for the hackle, I'm using a whiting dry fly saddle feather in a dyed dark dun. I like the upright hackle a lot for a caddis pattern because the naturals sit upright in the water and trout take them right off the surface. So I'm using an undersized hackle on this fly. I've undersized it by about 1 to 2 sizes. So on a size 14, I'm probably using a 16 or maybe even an 18 hackle. So let's get started tying this pattern. I'm going to tie on my thread, leaving ample room for the wing and the hackle at the forward part of the fly. It's just slightly behind the 2/3 point of where I'm going to tie this in. From here, I'm going to take a hank of my Zelon, and I'm going to basically split it in half. I'm going to use about half of a hank to tie in the trailing shuck. And then I'll trim off the excess, about a half of the hook length trailing off the back of the hook. Next, I'm going to take some of my dubbing blend and spin that onto my thread, and I'll capture a few fibers, and then I'm going to spin it around my thread to basically create a yarn and wind that forward all the way to where I tied the thread onto the hook. Essentially That is the abdomen of this pattern. Next, I'm going to take a small clump of deer hair and I'm going to clean it robustly. I'll probably discard about 50% of the guard hairs and the fluff on the out of the deer hair clump. And then I'm going to stack that in my stacker, and I'll tie that on with the tips trailing back about 2/3 of the shuck length. Next, I'm going to tie in my hackle. I've prepared it. I've stripped some barbs off the bottom of the hackle, and I'll tie that in dry fly style. I'm going to also coat the head area and the underside of the hackle with a little bit of glue, and I'm going to wind this into a bed of glue and wind it up through that area you see spaced up to where I clipped that deer hair off. And then I'll tie off the hackle. I'll clip off the excess and immediately drop into a whip finish. So now let me rotate the vise so you can see all sides of this pattern. So that has been your Sunriver Anglers Fly Tying Corner for this month. I hope you'll give the Black Emerging Caddis a try. This pattern has been nails for me on our local lakes here in recent weeks. If you like what you see, please subscribe to this YouTube page and like us at Sunriver Anglers on Facebook. Thanks for watching.